it's Stephanie here, Ms. Oh So Crafty. How's everyone doing? Welcome to my Flosstube video number 68. Welcome back, or hello if you're new. So, how was Mania, everybody? Now it's June, we're past Mania. May was actually a pretty good stitchy month for me. I managed 30 out of 31 days, and I got 3 finishes. I had said my intention was to do Monogamania with Celtic Winter. I didn't quite manage Monogamania. It was more like a Whipmania. But I did give Celtic Winter over 13 days, and she was one of my finishes, so that was cool. And June started with a lot of great stitchy events, so I'm really excited to get back to my regular rotation. And I wanted to film last week, but I got sick just after Memorial Day, so it didn't happen. But I'm better now, pretty much. If there's any weird edits, that's because I'm stopping the video to get like a drink of water or something, so no worries. Okay, let's get started. So I'm just going to go through with my bullet journal. I've worked on everything since we last spoke. So you're going to see all my whips, 3 finishes, and even a new start. Alright, so it was May 10th when I finished and I was working on Celtic Winter. I continued working on Celtic Winter. As I mentioned, I worked on Celtic Winter a whole lot in May and I did finish her, so I will insert my video of the finish right here. Hello, hello. I want to give you guys a close-up of my Celtic Winter finish, which I finished as of May 25th. So this pattern is by Lavender and Lace, Marilyn Lovett Emblem. I did a color conversion on it, and I used a modification, the cape chart that was created by Natalie G. More about my conversions in a minute. First, I'll give you the bare stats. So this thing is 11 by 17 about inches. It's stitched on 28 count pearl gray cashel, and the colors are converted, the beads are converted, everything is converted. So I'm very pleased with it. It took me 28 days to stitch, significant frogging in there, especially towards the end as I worked out my colors for the medallions. So let's talk about what I converted. So I started with the cape that Natalie created, and it's available on Facebook now, uploaded by Isabel H. in the LNL Celtic Ladies Conversion group, but I chose my own colors for it. I did use Natalie's colors for the dress. I substituted the petite silver petite treasure braid she'd called for with Krynic 001 HL high luster silver. It is very sparkly. I love her little foot there peeking out under her dress. So the colors that Natalie had chosen for the cape just didn't really work on my fabric. They kind of disappeared into the fabric, so I chose my own colors. And these are basically this is my idea of winter, these colors. I'm very happy with it. As for the beads, there's 4 colors of beads on here. There's white, which you can easily see in those. And then there's blue beads, silver beads. Those are silver, and that one is gray. Yeah. So 4 colors of beads in all, and the silver ones are Magnifica Silver Fox. You can see all the beadwork in the upper section. I added a modification up here. I backstitched the edge of the letters in the silver Krynic just because I felt like they needed a little something to make them more legible. And I'm very pleased with how that turned out. I think it looks awesome. I converted her hair to blonde because as charted it's just dark hair and I didn't think it was going to stand out very well against the dark blue cape, so I made her a blonde. The pattern calls for whisper thread. It's used in the trim of the cape as well as the muff. I also used a fuzzy fiber up there on her cape hood as trim. I did not use whisper because I was unable to locate my whisper at the time I was ready to stitch it. However, I did find this yarn that I had used for my last knitting project, and it was a wool cashmere fingering weight yarn, 3 plies, loosely plied. So I just unwound the plies. I used 1 ply, and 1 ply was more or less equivalent to 2 strands of DMC floss. So I used it on its own down here in the cape trim, and I used it up here in the muff blended with DMC floss. So like 1 strand of floss and 1 strand of the wool cashmere yarn ply. And the beauty of it was that although it was nice and fluffy and everything, it was also a lot sturdier than Whisper because, as I mentioned, the fiber I was using was wool and cashmere, while Whisper is mohair and nylon. So this one was delicate, but not nearly as delicate as Whisper, and it was much more enjoyable to stitch than Whisper. Although there were a few times where I broke it because I tugged too hard, so I just had to work with slightly shorter lengths and stuff like that, but it was nothing like Whisper where you really shouldn't work with a length longer than 6 inches. So I'm really pleased with this. She might be my favorite Celtic lady. I love how sparkly her dress turned out. And I love all the beads. I love her face and the letters and everything. She might be my favorite Celtic lady just because of all the customization. This is totally my idea of winter between the colors and the fibers. I love wearing wool and cashmere in winter, so yeah, I'm really pleased with her, and I can't wait to get her framed and hopefully hung up this year after Christmas, because you know I do have Celtic Christmas. She's probably my last Celtic lady. The only one I haven't done is summer, and I'm unlikely to do summer just because summer is not my favorite season, and I'm happy to have spring on the wall throughout summer and just put up fall in the fall and, you know, forget about summer. All right, I'll see you back in the main video. Bye. Okay, so the next week, the Tri-Wizard tournament was over, and we got our Magical Studies Year 4 Week 2 homework. It involved our whip album. It was to do a certain amount of stitches on a certain whip or whatever, and I just wanted to work on spring bell pull, so I opted to do 1,000 stitches on that one instead. The reason for that was I also had a district games challenge going on, which was to do 2,000 stitches in brown. And this piece actually has quite a lot of brown. So this is the Spring Bell Pull by Stony Creek magazine. And what I did to get the brown is I basically did all the brown I could in this block, the P block, and a lot of brown in the block below, the R block. And I have worked on it several days besides since then. I wanted to finish the S block by the end of May, so I did. That turned out really nicely. I love it. Those are just my favorite colors, the greens, the blues, the purples. So the modifications I made on this is I'm using Water Lily's Budding Leaf for the big letters, and I decided to use Vicki Clayton's Acts of Violets for the purple and for the letter, the sing, for the little word there, and all the other words. I think the P is going to be praise. So, yeah, the threads that were called for were the Weeks Dye Works Guacamole and something other Weeks Dutch Iris or something, and I didn't want to use the guacamole. I don't like the color all that much. I don't think it's right for spring. It's kind of like a dull green for Halloween in my opinion, but not so much for spring. And as for the other one, the Dutch Iris, I just didn't have it in my stash, so I just looked at my stash of hand-dyed fibers and I found this beautiful silk variegated floss. It goes from like a pinky purple to a bluey purple, and it's just so pretty. I love that, and I think the name is so clever, Acts of Violets. And I had a fair amount of progress on the P, so I decided to continue on that. I've used this for my Semi-Sane Stitchers roulette game, which is going on, and it's today, the stitching, so I managed about 1,500 stitches on this over a couple days on the P block, and it's coming along. I'm also using this for my Magical Stitches homework for the week. So the current homework is to work on something that will help you steal the dragon's egg. So I said that I'm going to take this spade here that's stuck in the dirt. I'm going to cast Engorgio upon it to make it a lot bigger. And then I'm going to use Wingardium Leviosa to float it above the dragon's head and then just drop it on her like Ron did with the troll in Chamber of Secrets. And at that point, either it'll knock the dragon out or she'll be a little bit dizzy. And in any case, she'll be distracted and I can run in and grab the egg. So I did 1,000 stitches on that for that. I already made a few mods for this. Well, just one really, I guess. The bunny, her eye is charted with 4 stitches, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, like a square. I didn't like it. I felt like it looked like a big black hole on the side of the bunny's face. So I just took some dark brown thread I had parked. I think it was DMC 938, and I did a French knot for the eye. It was 2 strands of floss, and I double wrapped the French knot to give it some size. So I think that turned out really cute, and I think she'll be absolutely adorable once the back stitch is in. And there's a few stitches in pink that'll be required for her mouth as well. So to finish this block, there's some purple flowers that need to go in there and a little bit more detail on the bird, missing the beak, and the spade as well. And then, of course, the back stitch. So the bird will be back stitched, the bunny, I think all this stuff, the pots are all back stitched, and the spade and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure all that's back stitched. And then the word, I think praise, as I mentioned. So this is coming along, and it's actually my favorite whip, which is surprising because when I stitched the summer belt buckle, that was decidedly not my favorite whip, but I think the fabric makes a big difference. This is the 100% cotton and cloth. I got it from Stony Creek. And it's really nice to stitch on. Although you have to be careful when you're doing the back stitch with one thread. It's pretty easy to slip the stitches in that case. And I just love the colors in this. It's all, all my favorite colors, especially in this first block, the green, the blue, and the purple. This floss here, the Water Lily's Budding Leaf, might be my favorite floss, and I'm so happy that I'm going to be able to use that in every single block as I go down for the big letters. I'm thinking about getting a few more skeins of it just to stockpile, because I do love the color so much. I'm also using this for my Hobbit homework this week, which is it has to do with Hobbit music, and one of the options was to stitch your favorite whip, and this is my favorite whip, so, yep. Alright, so that's Spring Bell Pull. Okay, so that week I went back to Celtic Winter, which you've already seen, and then towards the end of the week I worked on Winnie the Pooh. I have actually finished Winnie the Pooh, so I will insert a video of that here. Hello, it's Stephanie, Ms. Oh So Crafty. I wanted to make a clip and show you my Winnie the Pooh finish with some close-up footage. So this is Winnie the Pooh 2 by MCG Textiles, based on the art of Thomas Kincaid from the Disney Dreams collection. And I only used the pattern from the kit. I swapped the fabric for 28 count Natural Monaco by Charles Craft, and I swapped the floss for DMC. For the DMC conversion, I started with Cyber Stitchers, and then I did some of my own conversion colors as well too, where I found duplicates, and that happened maybe 8 or 10 times out of 80 colors, so it was sort of significant. And I do have my own conversion for this pattern typed up and willing to share if anyone wants it. So this took 66 days to stitch over 2 years, and the size is 12 inches by 14 inches. It's mostly stitched 2/2 on the Monaco, which I opted to use because it was cheap and easily available to me. However, if I could do it over, I would probably do Ghana or Joblin or something, just because the Monaco is rather densely woven, so with the petite point sections it got very tight. The petite point meaning 1/1. So I'll just go over the petite point sections now. So the first one was here, the swarm of bees in the tree. The next one was owl on the branch there. And then there was Tigger pushing Piglet on the wheelbarrow. And and Christopher Robin's head. Little bits of Christopher Robin, like his arm, and parts of Pooh were also done with fractional stitches. And let's see, and then Roo, that was Petite Point. These toys, some of them, the trumpet, the stool, the train back there, those were all done Petite Point. So there's lots of detail in here, tons and tons of backstitch in like 10 different colors. A lot of the backstitch is over one thread. Tons and tons of French knots. You can see them here. French knots galore, hundreds and hundreds of French knots, and then there's more through there. And over here, there's blue ones and red ones, and then over here, there's red, blue, pink, and yellow. So that was fun, sort of. I don't mind French knots, but with this pattern, it was like, gosh, enough is enough, you know? I really like how it turned out. I love all the characters. I think they're just adorable. You can definitely see Tigger's enthusiasm and his exuberance there, and Piglet sort of having the time of his life with his hands up, you know, being pushed along quickly in the wheelbarrow. And there's Eeyore bringing up the rear, and Rabbit striding along with his backpack, so industrious, and Christopher Robin helping his little buddy Pooh. What's going on here is that Pooh wants the honey that's up in the tree that's being guarded by the bees, and he doesn't know how to get up there, so Christopher Robin gives him his balloon to help him float up. And Kanga, I think, turned out really cute with Roo in her pocket, and even this little guy, I can never seem to remember what he is. He's like the gopher, I think. He was a character that was introduced in the cartoon, but not in the original books. So back to the backstitch, I actually charted a lot of my own backstitch because none of the Petite Point sections called for any backstitch, and in my opinion they needed it, especially this one. None of this was backstitch, so once I put in the backstitch, you could tell that Tigger has two legs and one of them is lifted, striding forward. You can tell he has two arms, both of them holding onto the handle of the wheelbarrow. Before it was just like this amorphous mess, basically. And with Piglet, ditto, you can see Piglet has, you know, little ears and he has little arms sticking up, and Roo, you can definitely see his face more and his little hands and his blue t-shirt. Christopher Robin's face stands out better, and his hair, his whole head really needed that little bit of extra backstitch. And then the most backstitch I added was over here on these toys, so only the only thing that was charted was these diagonal lines on the drum. So I added more backstitch to delineate the sides of the drum and the top of it, and then I added backstitch for the trumpet and the stool and the train. I had to look at the original art to figure out what it was before, like I said, amorphous mess. It just was a blur. I couldn't really tell what it was supposed to be, so I think the tree turned out really cute. So this is where Winnie the Pooh lives. You can see he's got a little chair there, a little chest of drawers, and a picture on the wall, and there's the door to his tree house and everything. There's another little window up there. There's quite a few things in this, quite a few areas in here that were stitched with blending filament. Like, you see that little glitter bit under Tigger, and then up here, that window, and all this white business on the tree, that was done with blending filament. Since I did swap out all the kit fiber, I used Krynic blending filament 100 for that. So I opted to put in my own initials at the bottom, though the chart did include Thomas Kincaid's signature and backstitch, so you could do that if you wanted. I really like this piece. I'm very pleased with it. I mean, there's a few areas I think could possibly be improved, but, you know, I did my best, so I think it's really awesome overall. I'm very proud of it, and I'm looking forward to hanging it up in my son's room. All right, see you back in the main video. Bye. All right, so the next week started with May 19th, and the district games were almost due. I needed 1,000 stitches on wood built items. So I opted to work on my spooky house piece, and I did 1,000 stitches on the tree and the house itself. So this is stitched on 32 count Thunderstorm Belfast by Silk Weaver. The pattern is Spooky House by X's and O's, Sandra Parlow. I love it. I really need to work more on the moon though, because the moon is huge. You can kind of get an idea of the dimensions. All around there is moon, and of course some of it's going to be covered by tree, but the bulk of it is the moon, and I'm using PTB for it. Isn't that pretty the way it glistens? Oh, so pretty. Beautiful. Huge moon. Lots of stitches, but part of the charm of this piece. So I just need to do it. And the 1,000 stitches just don't really look like much, because some of them are fractional stitches and they're just a lot of gray and gray, and the stitches are tiny, and at least you can see the tree. So I also worked on it. So the magical stitches that homework that week was to stitch various colors representing the champions of the Triwizard Tournament. So brown for Victor, red for Harry, yellow for Cedric, and blue for Fleur. So I did this piece for the brown. Tons of brown, obviously, right? With the tree. So 200 stitches there for that. Alright, so the other things I worked on that week were Winnie the Pooh, Spring Bell Pull, Celtic Winter, all that stuff, which you've seen. Another thing we had going on that week was the homework home, which was meet Gandalf when he visits Bilbo. So the idea for that, there were 3 tasks. One was to stitch a project that reminded you of a good morning. I opted for Pooh because, well, it's like a bright morning with the blue sky and everything. And then there was another one to stitch a pattern that surprised you, that was not quite what it seemed. So that I chose to do the stitches for, because when I first saw Stay the Stitches, I wasn't all that into it, but I changed my mind about it after I stitched the mini mandala Sal last year, and I wanted a bigger black work piece because I really enjoy black work, and Save the Stitches was just the ticket. So just something that I was indifferent about initially. I really do enjoy it now. So this pattern is by Elizabeth Almond. It's a free pattern, and I'm using DMC 4240 for the variegated, and 336 for the solids, and Diamant in 3 colors for the metallics. I'm currently working on part 5, which is this one down here. And I'm actually behind on it because it's June and part 5 is not done. My aim is to do 12 parts this year, so I really need to keep up with like 1 part per month. It doesn't really take that long to stitch. I just haven't given it much time in recent months, so I am hoping to give it 5 days this month, and we'll see how far I get. It would be awesome if I could do like 5, 6, 7. We'll see. Alright, so that's Save the Stitches. And then the last part of that Gandalf homework was to stitch something with symbols, and I used Celtic Winter because it has those mandalas. Alright, so the next week started, May 26th. I had another District Games challenge to address, and that one was to do 1,000 stitches on trees. The spooky house tree wasn't really going to work because 1,000 stitches is a lot, and I just didn't want to really get that far ahead on the tree. So my whip pile was getting rather low because I had finished 2 pieces, Celtic Winter and Winnie the Pooh by that point, so I decided to make a new start. I will insert a picture and see what it's supposed to look like. So here's my start on Twilight Bridge by Dimensions. This is the right edge of it. I folded the fabric to find the center, and then I gridded out to the edge and started at the edge because there's a big tree there. So I did 1,000 stitches on the tree, or, well, more than that really, because most of it's half cross, and half cross only counts for half. So yeah, and I did a little bit of work on the bridge there. So this is stitched on the 18 count Aida that came in the kit, and I've said many times I was not going to use that kit fabric, but I was kind of like, well, I had the kit fabric right there in front of me, and I didn't want to like go out and buy anything, didn't want to spend the money, didn't want to leave my house. So, and I did test this fabric, and it seemed okay. It seems much nicer than the fabric that was in the Fall Fairy kit, so no problem so far. Knock on wood. Hopefully I won't come to regret the decision. But I do really enjoy working on it, and I'm looking forward to working on it a little more this month. I need it for a couple of the challenges, the extra credit challenges in the School Magical Stitches, so I'll go over that later, I guess. We can talk about all the ones I did for the challenges. I'm almost done with it now, but I have a few remaining. Alright, so that's Twilight Bridge, my new start. And then on the 27th, I opted to work on Fantasy Triptych because, well, that week we had the SPEW homework going on in the School of Magical Stitches. That is Hermione's gig, the Society for the Prevention of Elvish Warfare. So the idea is you were supposed to stitch a project mapping to each of those letters, S-T-E-W. This was obviously my W, Teresa Wentzler Fantasy Triptych. So I worked on it one day and got 200 stitches in this column over here. So this column you can see is coming along. I'll probably be able to finish it the next time I take it out and then do a couple more columns hopefully. I think there's another like 3 or 4 columns on this page, and then the castle will be, the bottom half of it anyway will be done. This one, I haven't given it very much time. I think it always sort of like falls in the wayside just because, well, it's not a finished goal for this year, and also just being a Teresa Wentzler with all the blends and everything, it takes longer to stitch, so it's certainly not the project to stitch if you want to get like 1,000 stitches in 2 days or whatever, so, or 2,000 stitches in 2 days for that matter. Yeah, I did that one time in Mania. I got 2,000 in 2 days, and I took a break after that because I was burned out. 2,000 in 2 days is just a lot, in my opinion. 2,000 in 3 days, that's better. That's not so bad. But this one, I'm lucky if I can get like 300 in a day or 400 in a day. So, yep. I plan to work on it like 5 days this month, and we'll see how far I get. So back to the SPEW homework. So for the S, I did the Spring Bell Pull. You've seen that. For E, I did my Joan Elliott Christmas Teddy. So I guess I can show that one to you now. So E for Elliott, of course. This is stitched on 32 count opalescent Belfast. You see that sparkle? Sparkle, sparkle. And there's a lot of metallic in here. There's gold metallic and there's silver metallic as trim for the fur. Now obviously I've given this a lot more than 200 stitches or whatever since last time we spoke, when his head was done, but the hat was patchy and all that stuff. So I opted to use this piece for the poker challenge that started June 1st in Semi-Sane. So I bet that I could do 2,000 stitches in 4 days. I did manage that in 3 days, and it wasn't bad, as I mentioned. So it was actually more backstitch than cross stitch. So there wound up being like 1,300 cross stitch and like 1,500 backstitch, basically, something like that. And then it added up to 2,000. I finished up the metallics on the bottom and finished up the back stitching and did all like the ninja stitches. And I finished off the trim of the hat up here and the hat itself. So all that's left now is a little bit more back stitching on the teddy and his hat. And then I have to stitch the rest of the window frame. And I need to do more of these ornaments, the gold ornament. See that gold ornament there? There's 2 more of those, one up here and one over here. And then there is a smattering of beads to attach, so not too many beads. I'm hoping to finish this piece this month. It's my focus finish piece for Stitch from Stash. I'm not like really like wedded to the idea of finishing though. I think that my Stitch from Stash budget is kind of hopeless. I mean, I could finish in the positive, but I want to order some PTP fabric from Dream is Sale, so I don't know. We'll see. It might be better to save the finish, just write off this cycle and apply the finish credit to next time. And then for W, well, I already showed you W. For P, I did post office. That's part of my Christmas village. Here is my Christmas village. That's 11 buildings are done, and the 12th one has started. So as I mentioned, P for post office, so I worked on that, and I actually finished it on the 28th of May. Lots of beads on there. This post office took me 8 days to stitch with the border and everything. So this is stitched on 28 count Stormy Gray Jobelin. The border is done in Kreinik number 4032, the snowflake border. The post office came out pretty cute. I love the brickwork. I love the little mailbox and the flag. I think the bows are a little bit wonky, but whatever. Let's just pretend they're waving in the wind. I had to do a modification because these bead spikes over here were actually charted to go over in a row of beads. And I'm like, I can't do that because I couldn't tack down the swags over existing beads. It was just like a big old mess. So I ripped out the beads and just stitched that area in a crew floss. And then I started working on the firehouse next door. I started with the yellow. I did 200 stitches in yellow. All in all, there's over 500 stitches on the firehouse so far, which is hard to believe because they're so spread out, but I was counting, believe me. So I did those stitches in yellow because it was the dwarf homework for the Stitchy Quest. So the idea was stitch 100 stitches for each of the 13 dwarves who visited Bilbo in the various colors representing the dwarves. So there were 2 yellow dwarves, so I did 200 stitches in yellow for that. And I worked on a whole bunch of projects to accomplish that task, most of which you've already seen. So I am looking forward to working more on the firehouse this month in June, and I don't know if I'll be able to finish it in June, but hopefully get a good chunk of progress into it. And then the S was the spring bell pull, which you've seen. So that pretty much brings us up to June. So June 1st started with lots of fun challenges and semi-sane stitchers. So it started with the casino, roulette. As I mentioned, I used Christmas Teddy, bet I could do 2,000, got 2,000. I was also using that for the balance event in semi-stain. So with balance, the idea is you stitch on something for the first week and then you choose an option, and depending on what option you choose, you are going to get assigned to work on either 1 or maybe 5 more whips. And to achieve perfect balance, you would do the same amount of stitches that you did on the first whip on the other 5. So I was like, well, I can probably manage 2,000 on 5 more whips, but I don't know if I could manage, like 2,600 or 3,000 or whatever, which is what I would have gotten had I continued working on it beyond those 3 days. So I opted to rotate to spring bell pull after that. Yeah, so I worked on Christmas Teddy for 3 days, June 1st through 3rd, and then I had 2 days left on my 5-day rotation, so I decided to pop in spring bell pull just because I wanted to get some progress on it. I did. And also I found a way to fit it into my magical homework, as I mentioned, enchanting the spade and everything, and I also fit it into my Hobbit homework, which was Hobbit music, and one of the options was stitch your favorite whip, so that's my favorite whip. Alright, so do you want to talk about School Magical Stitches extra credit now? Alright, so the first item was stitch something found in a lake, and my plan is to work on Twilight Bridge and stitch some of the lake that's in some of the water that's in the creek, because water is found in a lake, right? I haven't done that yet. So number 2 is stitch something you'd find at a winter ball. I opted to do Celtic Winter for that one because lady in a fancy dress, she could easily be heading to a ball. Number 3 was Mad Eye Moody, stitch something with an eye. I opted for Celtic Winter because she is a lady in profile, she has an eye. Number 4, mode of transportation. I opted for Firehouse because it actually has a wagon. I will insert a picture if you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, number 5 was stitch the Imperious Curse. It's something that you have to stitch for whatever reason. I chose Celtic Winter because at the time it was my closest piece to a finish and I felt that I had to finish it. Number 6 is maze. Stitch something you'd find in a maze, trees, grass, shrubbery, whatever. I opted to do my Twilight Bridge piece for that because of the tree and there's some bushes beneath it. I'll insert a pic. So I have that one in progress, 385 done out of 500. The next one is stitch a project with words. I opted to do Celtic Winter because it has a word, winter. Number 8 is project starting with one of the letters in Goblet, G-O-B-L-E-T. I opted for Twilight Bridge, T for Twilight, right? Number 9 is longest since worked on. So for me, I mean, obviously that depends, you know, when you, what day you, I work on stuff all the time, so I don't really know what my longest to work on is. I think it might be the Twilight Bridge piece, actually, because I last worked on that May 26th, and I think I worked on everything I've had since then, so. And then number 10 is stitch on something that lay eggs. That was only 200 stitches. I decided to work on Spring Bell Pull because it has birds, and birds lay eggs. And then number 11 is watch Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire, and stitch. And you can work on anything on that. I haven't done it yet. I generally do that one last just because it's so loose, and I like to read the book first before I watch the movie. I mean, of course, I've read all those books multiple times, but I'm rereading them for the challenge and everything, and just because they're good books and I enjoy them. So I'm about halfway through Goblet of Fire now, and I just started reading a great book today. I'm really enjoying it. It's a YA book called The Extraordinary Adventures by Alfred Knopf, and it's about this teenage boy who steals Excalibur, and it's really funny. I chose it for, well, I initially picked it up at the library because the author's name is Yancey. His last name is Yancey, starting with a Y, and I needed a Y for my ultimate reading challenge in Magical Stitches, where you spell out the names of the challenges of the houses in Hogwarts. And also for the Stitchy Quest, new reading prompts were released for June, and one of them was to stitch something with that has read a book that has something stolen. And as I mentioned, the book is about a boy who steals Excalibur, so something is stolen in the first 100 pages. Okay, so I've actually read a lot of books lately, and I'd be happy to talk about them in these videos, but only if people are interested. So leave me a comment and tell me if you want me to add book content to these videos. In the meantime, though, I'm just going to mention one book that I have finished recently. It's called The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I chose it for the I Like Big Books challenge in Magical Stitches, which is read something over 700 pages, and Jessie Marie, hi Jessie if you're watching, she had mentioned that book on her channel, and I like fantasy, and I requested it from the library, and I and I got it, so I started reading it. It took a while to read, being 800 pages, but I did really enjoy it. It is a fantasy that's very female-centered, so most of the main characters with power and agency are women, and that's really cool. There's dragons in it, there's kingdoms, there's fantastical creatures, animals that can talk, and sentient animals and that kind of thing. There's pirates, there's magic. It's a great book, kind of a epic adventure with a lot of different characters, and the main thrust of the book is that there are evil, draconic forces awakening that are threatening the civilized world, if you will, and there's a great division in this world between the East and the West, and they need to sort of come together and parley if they're going to unite and defeat this threat. So there's some characters in the book that are from the West, some from the East, and it's really good. I would rate it 4.5 stars. I think I probably gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I can't remember. But yeah, excellent book if you want, a really big fantasy book. That's your, check it out. All right, so today is May 6th. It's time for my second 5-day rotation in the month. I'm not really sure what I'm going to work on. My focus pieces for June are the Joan Elliott Teddy, which I've already addressed, and Teresa Wentzler Fantasy Triptych, Save the Stitches, Mill Hill Village, and Spooky House. So one of those. We shall see what I feel like working on later, I guess. And my other goals for this month are to finish off my Magical Stitches extra credit, which would be the 500 stitches on the water for Twilight Bridge, and another 150 stitches about on the tree and bushes, also on that same piece. And then work on my longest since worked on, whatever that may be at the time I get around to it. And, of course, watch Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire, and Stitch. And then, keep up with the Stitchy Quest and the Semi-Stain and all that stuff. So, yeah, I don't really know if I'm going to continue with the casino because, well, I don't gamble in real life, so I don't really know how to play any of these games, and I don't know. We'll see. I've done poker and roulette, and the next game is Keno. I don't really even know what Keno is. I had to look it up last night. So maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. We'll see. There's lots of different fun events going on in my various groups, and I have plenty of things to stitch. So I'm also planning to make a new start this week or this weekend because I need 500 stitches on clothes for the district games. It is the textile district. So the first challenge was to do 100 stitches in specialty floss. That was like last week or whatever. I worked on the border on the Mill Hill Village because that's in Krynick, and that's a specialty floss. That was easy, 100 stitches. That was like 2 snowflakes. So not even 2 snowflakes. Each of those snowflakes, I think, is like 57 stitches or something. So, hey, I realized I forgot to show you my stash. I received a few comments on my last video complaining about the crinkles, so I decided I would store my stuff like off behind me, further away from the mic. So hopefully the crinkles won't be as bad this time. All right, so I got this in the mail. Harris of Atlantis by Bella Filipina from Leslie, along with this fabric to stitch her on, Chesapeake Bay, 32 count Belfast. I think this is beautiful. And I'm really excited to start this piece, although I don't know when I will. I did kind of plan out my stitching for the rest of the year, and I've got potentially 4 more things I'm going to start, and this is not one of them, sadly. But I do really like having the lower whip count in general and getting the finishes, so I have 7 whips at the moment, and I will have 8 after I start Anna. And that's kind of where I like to keep it, because I like to be able to work on everything regularly and get those finishes. So my aim is to keep with 8 whips throughout the year and hopefully end with less than 8 so I can start a project or 2 in January. All right, that's it for me for today. I will come back hopefully at the end of June to talk about my projects and everything and give you an update. All right, happy stitching everyone. Be well, be happy. Ta-ta!